Wendi, pillars, pillars. Okay, so I'm gonna pass it to her in just a second, but I just have to say that I've got to give her an intro first because this woman, I worked with her for a while. We went through show prep together. I was fortunate enough to be her coach. And I did not know this woman until I knew this woman, but she is incredible. So she has published two books, one of which she published while we were in show prep and low key, like I didn't know. And then she also has served in the military. She is a full time science teacher for a high school. She has a son. She's a single mom. She does it all. She's an explorer. I could keep going, but I'm not going to. Wendi, everybody. So I am having Wendi because I want her to tell us how she does it. As women, we have so many demands, we have so much going on. So how do we do it? Like sometimes we feel like we're alone. We feel like we're busier than everybody around us. But the truth is we can do it. There's always a way. And so Wendi's going to tell us about that. So what I want to ask first, and those of you guys who join late, go ahead and hit hashtag replay if you're watching the replay. And if you do join while we're going, drop your questions below. I would love to pop them in there if I can. So Wendi, first of all, what the heck made you want to do a bodybuilding show in the middle of publishing a book and everything else?
Oh my gosh. Well, first, hey, thanks for having me on tonight. I like my cheeks already hurt from smiling. Thanks for all the kind words. But for me, I have been thinking about, or I had been thinking about doing a contest for a couple of years. And why I wanted to do that, first of all, I wanted to see what I could do. So it was like this lens of curiosity. Like what could I do, especially at my age, right? So I'm 53. I did the contest last year, so it was when I was 52. I was like, what if I tried this? So that lens of curiosity was one. And then, just having that experimenter's mindset, like, all right, we'll see how this goes. And it was a way for me to really just have something I felt like I could control. With teaching and with my son, with his travel ball and extracurricular activities at school and all the other stuff going on. For women, like you mentioned at the start, I think there's like a guilt feeling when you take that time for yourself. And if you don't take that time for yourself, nobody's going to be happy. So for me, it was finding that space to control what I thought I could control, which was actually quite a bit. And then once you push yourself in one area of your life, it propels you and gives you momentum in other areas. So it's kind of counterintuitive where you think, man, I don't have the energy to do this. But if you push yourself a little bit in that area and you see a little bit of progress, you don't have to see a ton. It does move you forward. So those were the main reasons. Like I knew that momentum would carry me forward, and also I could control that time for myself, and then just curiosity. Those are my reasons.
Oh my gosh, those are good ones too. And I think something that so many of us can relate to, the one that jumped out to me was control, because I think sometimes we almost hear it as a bad thing as women, like, oh, like you're controlling or you want to have control over this. But I think the truth is we have our hands in so many things. We have so many things we're constantly trying to juggle that sometimes it does feel good just to have that one ultimate thing in our day that we know we have control over. So I can completely relate. And especially with the training, like just knowing that's your time, like whatever your window is, knowing that you're there for you at that time. And I think, I don't know about you, but I get like mom guilt and I just get guilty about taking time to myself. I think you touched on that. And yeah, it's a real
I think
thing.
we all do. And it's, I mean, we could get into a whole other conversation about this, but I'll just put it out there because I know you guys are thinking about it, is for men to go to the gym, it's an expectation. It is totally normal. No one will ever ask them, hey, who's watching your kids while you're here? But for women, they're like, so is your son at home? Or where's your son? What is he doing?
Yes.
So
I
it's very interesting, and you just need to own it because you deserve to be there as much as any other person.
Ooh, I like it. Own it. Yes. Yeah, we're worthy for sure.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I see that
And
it show prep too. I've seen it with women, locally in my area that I know from the gym where when the woman's in show prep, like a lot of couples, they'll do show prep and the woman will go for as long as the child care will allow. And the man gets to go for, and I know it's not like that in every case. Like, my husband, we try to split things right down the middle, but I feel like for a lot of women, it's, you're working with a very short time frame.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And you really do have to optimize, like whether you feel like doing it or not, you've got to push it because you've got this window. And that's, but yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. And it doesn't surprise me to think that in a couple situation, the man would stay longer, but we could talk about that for a long time.
You're right. You're right. Well, we'll focus on you. So, as far as training, let's talk about training a little bit. How did you squeeze that in?
So I work out in the morning before I go to school, and that means I normally, since Aubrey told me I needed to eat before I work out, I ended up, my alarm goes off at 4:30, and then I would eat a little bit and then try and leave for the gym by 5. I would be there at least an hour and 15 minutes, and then get home, take a shower, and get ready to go to school. So getting that done in the morning was key for me because in the afternoon, again, so many different demands and expectations, work stuff, baseball, sports, groceries, cooking, you name it, right? All in the evening. So mornings started my day off right, and then having my nutrition planned out. So what was I going to eat for each meal, having it ready. I'll prep on the weekends or in the middle of the week. I'll prep for the rest of the week. And then I make my lunch at night. I always bring food to school. I don't ever eat out during the day, which is nice. So having that ready, and sometimes that takes a little time, but I'll listen to a podcast while I'm cooking or, listen to a book or something like that. So I don't feel like it's a waste of time. I can still just kind of relax while I'm doing it.
That's a good
But
point.
yeah,
I feel that way with cardio too, when you get close to a show, or just for people in general that are doing like 2 a days or just doing a little extra work. And
yeah,
again, that guilt kind of comes in where it's like, I'm putting so much time into this one activity, but if you can throw in a good podcast or like have something
right,
else going on, I mean, win-win.
right. You can get, I've trained myself to read while I am on the treadmill, and so I can jog and read at
And
the
you've
same
never had an
time.
accident? You've never fallen off? Some,
I have not
I was
had
going
an
to say, because
accident.
there's some interesting videos, but that's impressive. Once again, add it
Yeah.
to the list of things that impress me about Wendy. Um,
Well, it's just a way to get through it.
it's
Yeah.
very true. And prepping, I think, is a huge one. I'm glad you touched on that because a lot of women will say, meal prep takes me so long. It's like, it's such a big deal. But would you agree that it actually saves a lot of time? If you're serious about your goals, like you want to eat on plan, that prep time is actually going to save you a lot of time.
Right. It is. And the thing is, you anticipate what your triggers are going to be, right? So you know that, all right, if I come home from school, sometimes the first thing I want to do is just go right to the fridge. Like, what is there? What can I snack on? And if there's nothing that's healthy in there, then I'm going to be tempted to eat something that I know I don't want to eat or I know I don't need to eat, but I would if I was hungry, if that makes sense. So
Absolutely.
just having fewer triggers around if you are meal prepping and planning ahead.
So almost like preventative measures too. It's like
Yeah.
if you know you have a craving a certain time, like I hear a lot of women say, I snack at night, like I got a sweet tooth at night. And that's one of those situations where really the preventative measures are important because if you eat 6 meals a day, you're not probably going to want to snack at night the same as if you eat one. So
I don't want to eat anymore.
right. It's like, that's what's so funny is once people that's always my go-to is if they're like, I'm having a hard time sticking to the plan. I'm like, are you eating all the meals? And it's always no. Like they're like, no, I skip a meal here and there. And I'm like, that's why, because you're going to be full, like on clean food.
Yeah. Well, that's what, yeah, I don't know how many times I told you, I was like, God, can I just cut out one of these meals? I can't eat all.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it might have been like 200 or 300 calories a meal, but when you're eating whole foods, it sticks with your body so much longer than you would think. And it's not even like there's not even any sauces or, you know, things that you think would help it stick to your ribs.
It's
Right? It's
different.
just the basic foods, but they're when they're whole foods, your body is busy breaking down those nutrients.
Yeah. And I feel like show prep too, a lot of people don't understand that you can't just eat any whole food. Like it has to be very clean whole food. So I remember a story. I remember where I was driving down the road when you asked me if you could have a one bar. And that sounds psychotic to someone who's not in prep. It's like, what's the big deal? It's just a one bar. But that's the difference between like, what you bring to the stage that day. So like all the details matter, which is why
Right.
I've always been very impressed by you and how you handled show prep because I don't think I ever heard you complain. Like you always stayed in the solution and you never said I couldn't or like I can't do this or that's not possible. You just figured out a way.
Well, that's um, because I took responsibility, right? So if I complained, like I'm the one that made the choice to do that contest. I'm the one that made the choice knowing that I would go through that contest prep. So complaining wasn't going to change anything because I was still planning on doing the prep. So it's like this is who we are now. This is what we do now. Let's go.
Ooh, all or nothing. I love it. I love it.
Well, you know what they say. There's a saying, right? 100% is a breeze, 99% is a bitch, right? Because if you give yourself any wiggle room or any room to waver in your plan, even that 1%, it's going to make it so much harder. And I've also read where what is it? Choice is one of your most adamant opponents. And I don't remember who wrote that, but if you give yourself choice, and
Yeah.
you're like, well, should I work out today or should I not work out? Should I work out in the morning? Should I work out later? But if you decide, like I knew, all right, I'm working out tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock. I'm working out Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Boom. Right. There was no wavering. There was no oscillation in that piece. That was my distinction. So I think if we're talking show prep, I know there's a difference between just like the fitness piece and then show prep. But if you decide to go into a show, it's like once you make that decision, you're all in. And that decision piece, that point, is transformative because at that point you're like, okay, all systems go towards that way. You're not looking back at all. You're just going that way.
Sure. And I do think it's relevant to other people too that maybe aren't as extreme as show prep, but it might just be like I'm going to go to the gym 5 days a week. Like I always find stuff to do that gets in the way, so maybe that's the non-negotiable. Like I'm going to do this to get that peace. I love that you said peace. That wasn't a word I was expecting, and that's so true. I feel like when we're doing what's in alignment with what's going to make our future self happy, like we have that peace. We definitely have that piece. So that's a really good point. And it's almost like you really do you create everything. So like the choice you make now is creating your future. And I think we're so used to those quick fixes and like instant gratification that it's almost like we have to rewire ourselves in society.
Yeah, there's a lot of I don't know, hesitate to say it. I want to say faith, like in the process, because you can't see the end result, and a lot of times you can't see any result for quite a while. You might feel something different, which I do when I'm eating really clean. I totally feel different energy levels, but as far as sticking with something, you have to believe in what you're doing, and it has to be meaningful to you. So if you hear somebody else say, yeah, I'm going to go to the gym 5 days a week, and you're not at that point, you might do, the little tiny habits routine where you create a habit that is so small that it's almost stupid, right? Like you say, all right, I want to start working out. I'm going to do one push-up a day. And you get down, when you get out of bed, you do that one push-up and you check that off. And then as you click off, okay, I did 5 days in a row, I did it. And you maybe, like, I like the visual piece.
Yeah.
So you can see, maybe checks on a calendar or a piece of paper. And when you do that, you're building, like, confidence is confident, like, integrity with yourself, trust in yourself. So you're building confidence, you're building that trust in yourself, even through those tiniest of habits. And I think that helps build momentum too, because you're taking action towards your goal, even though it might seem really, really small. You're doing amazing things in your mind. And so for those of you who are just getting started, if you're not even close to show prep, like, just think about something that's important to you to try and give yourself a goal. Like, let me do this for 30 days. It might be you want to start jogging. Well, the first thing you do is just take your running shoes and walk out the door and then come back in. And you don't even have to run, but just going through that action and, like, retraining the brain, this is hopefully a lifestyle change. So it's going to be challenging, and it should be challenging because it's a big change that's important for you.
It sort of reminds me when you're, like, in a funk, or I'm in a funk, and I think that it's going to take so much to get me out of that funk, but sometimes just changing one thing in my schedule totally brings me out of it. It's like it just changes it for me. And I think it's the same thing with habits. We think that it's like all or nothing, and for show prep it is, but for just getting started or for just starting to work towards something, like you're saying, I love that idea of just going through, like, the motion to begin with. Like, I feel like the hardest part is walking into the gym when you first start. Like, even if you've done it before, and if there's time where you've got that downtime, like, it's just, that's the hardest part, is getting back in there. And then once you do, you're going to do something. So I love that.
Like, I'm here now. I'm not going to waste it. So
yeah. And building trust with yourself. I think about that all the time. Like, is this decision I'm making right now going to make me feel like I can handle what decision comes next? It's just, we're constantly building that trust. Love it.
Yeah, and it's a constant conversation too. So, like, you and I have been doing this for a long time, and it's still something that we have conversations with ourselves all the time. Well, all right, well, what am I going to eat? How am I going to do this? What can I do to optimize my time? What can I, how can I go to bed at this time so that I can wake up ready to go? There are so many micro conversations. That means there's, like, moment to moment micro choices, and they all do what you said. Like, if you make this choice, how is it going to impact the next one? And every single minute you have, or every single moment, that's what I tell my students, every single moment you have a choice of how you show up. So if you came into my classroom, for example, and you just had a bad attitude, I can say, all right, reset, flip the switch, do what you need to do, and let's start over, right? Like, and you give yourself that same chance that you would give someone else.
Sure.
And just remember that if you had a bad day or you had a bad meal, you've got another one coming up. Do what you know is right.
Right. One bad moment doesn't have to turn into a bad day.
Exactly. That doesn't define you. So
and
remember that. Ladies, women, we're so awful about just crushing our souls for ourselves, right? We want to be perfect and we want everything right away, and it doesn't happen like that.
We're very hard on ourselves. That was actually going to be my next question to you, is for a woman who's experiencing the overwhelm of it, and you've already touched on so much of it, but what would you say to her? Like, what can she put in her mind to kind of help her get through those overwhelming moments?
Tiny steps, right? Know that your energy is going to oscillate. So kind of step back and say, all right, because you need to recover too. We have a lot going on. Everybody does in 2023. So you're going to have days when you're full of energy, and then days where that's going to dip. So reflect back and say, all right, am I in the right oscillation phase for that? Think about, I have this through line of gratitude. that sustains me when I am feeling overwhelmed. I sit back and remember how many things I have that I am blessed with in my life. And that helps me flip my mental switch. So we don't want to take our mobility for granted. That is something I am so grateful for. And I want to maintain that. You know, I want my health to be like a powerhouse and not a prison. I don't,
Yeah.
I want to be able to, you know, like as a single woman, I don't anticipate that I'm going to have somebody taking care of me when I'm older. So in my mind, I'm like, all right, I'm going to be able to carry these groceries in one fell swoop. If you don't want to make trips to the car. And
Absolutely.
I want to just be able to do the yard work I have without having to worry about falling over or not having enough strength to just do regular things around the house on my own. And that sustains me. So I don't, you know, I know it's cliche to think of your why, but your why could be, hey, I want to be a role model for my son, which I do. That was a driving factor. Sit back and think about, okay, this is a big thing with overwhelm, and it's our screen time. Can I just call on that?
Yeah, call them out.
I talk to a lot of people who are overwhelmed, and they say they wish I could do what you do, but I just don't have time. And if you do the math, if you spend 30 minutes a day, 30 minutes on your phone just scrolling, and that's so easy to do. TikTok, oh my God, that's addictive, right? So 30 minutes a day adds up to, hang on, I don't want to get these numbers wrong. I wrote it down because 30 minutes of screen time a day adds up to 10,950 minutes a year, right? You divide that and do all the math, that ends up being a little over 7.5 days, which is 183 hours. So if you're telling me you don't have time, can you imagine what your body would feel like and look like if you spent 183 hours a year working on your fitness? And you could gain that amount of hours back with 30 minutes less of screen time a day. Like, and to me, that helps break it down. You could do 15 minutes, you know, whatever. That's still 90 some hours a year. But if you spent 183 hours working on yourself instead of scrolling through social media, you would be transformed. And when I step back from my phone, from my social media, from, you know, all the things, I feel so much calmer, and that element of peace is with me again. And my mind can clear because I'm not being inundated with everybody else's thinking. So then I can just kind of calm. I have, like, my goal is this energized tranquility, right? That's what I want at school. I want to be energized, but I just want to be grounded. So this energized tranquility does not exist when I'm constantly being inundated with input from other people's ideas. And part of that is where my overwhelm comes from. So I wonder if somebody is feeling overwhelmed. It could be all the basics, you know, eating, your sleep amount, your water intake, your movement throughout the day. Those I would always check on those first. But then the next thing would be, gosh, what are you doing with your time?
Sure. And I wanted to even take that from a different angle with the social media piece. It gives us that hit of dopamine like each time, and it's just reinforced and reinforced. And I think that goes back to that instant gratification where we're like wiring ourselves to want to feel good or like feel relief immediately. And I think about the difference is like dopamine versus serotonin. Like build the serotonin over time, like stuff that's going to last, like exercise, like eating good. And you just have, like you're saying, that more tranquil state versus being up and down and up and down. And the comparison is unreal on social media. Like everybody puts their best pics out there, like myself included. And it's just, there's no way you're not going to play the comparison game after a while. And women, we're already hard enough on ourselves. So
Yeah.
it's just constant reinforcement.
Right. So you got the dopamine hits, but then you've got that, oh my God, I'm not good enough. You got the comparison effect along with the dopamine, and then your mind is all jumbled up, and it's just
Yeah.
it's that does help lead to overwhelm and just a lack of clarity of your own thinking. So
Yeah, so just put the tech down, put the technology down for a little bit. And
yeah,
I was going to ask, like, really the last question I had is for you personally, like, if you look back at all you've accomplished, how have you really built your self efficacy over time? Like, how have you built that trust in yourself that you've got what it takes to hit these goals? Because you've hit big goals. I mean, you don't just casually publish 2 books and win a bodybuilding show at the same time and, raise a kid. It's incredible.
uh, thank you. I appreciate it. It's always nice to be acknowledged, so I appreciate it. It is still a process. And I think that's what keeps me going because I know that there's this. Dan Pink talks about it. There's, he talks about it in the realm of leadership, but mastery is an asymptote. So if you have your x-axis and your y-axis, right, x and y, and your leadership, as you get better and you gain more skills, that line goes up, but it just keeps going up, up, up. It never really stops anywhere. So an asymptote is like as you get better, you expect more, and that you're never going to get to a certain destination. So I know that this is a process, and that keeps me grounded and also more focused. Um, Again, making decisions that were meaningful to me, that's a second piece. Like, why am I so focused on staying fit and staying well? As when I'm running a household on my own, there was no fallback, right? So that's been a big thing. Like, keep your energy up, keep your health up, so that you can work multiple jobs and do what you need to do. A third thing is I do live with chronic pain, so I don't know if there are others that are watching that do, but I have 4 degenerated discs in my low back, and movement is key to me feeling better. And again, that sounds counterintuitive, but having movement and it was interesting because I slacked off a little bit I don't know, I guess a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, I'd slacked off because I thought, well, maybe the lifting is making it worse. And it actually got worse. And then I started lifting again and upping the weights and lifting heavier than I had before, and my back felt better. So that was a good awakening for me to realize. So, like I said before, I want my health to be more of a passport than a prison. The
I'm also
fourth
real
thing,
quick, I just want to say I'm really convinced that you would feel much worse if your mentality was not what it was. Because again, like I forget that you even have the degenerated discs. Like I forget that that's something that you deal with on a daily basis. And because you don't talk about it, like you don't focus on it, you just focus on the solution. When you're saying that, I remember us looking for some of those like erector building exercises to isolate them. But I mean, I forgot
yeah.
because you don't complain about it.
Well, because I'm grateful, right? Like
Yeah.
it's really hard for me to get up in the mornings, and that's when I go work out. But I do that full body in the morning when I wake up. I'm like, all right, how are we feeling today? How are we doing?
Checking
But
in.
again, I'm grateful for like every movement that I can make. I'm super grateful.
Yeah, that
Um,
actually was something I wanted to emphasize as you did talk about gratitude, and it's so powerful because like show prep, any goal, I feel like it's so easy to get into that like kind of whiny mentality where you're like a victim. Like you kind of not you, but just we can get in that victim mentality if we're not careful. And it's like, what in the world? We have a body that works great. Like we can press, we can jump, we can run. I mean, some people weren't born being able to do that. So it's like there's always gratitude. There's always something to be grateful for.
it's a gift, and well, it's funny you say that because there's times we're like, man, it'd be nice to just be a full time bodybuilder or a competitor or whatever, like in your mind, you're thinking, I know it's not easy, but still, you're like, man, I wonder what it'd be like if I didn't have to go to school, if I didn't have to work, if I didn't have this. So you're always thinking about that. And again, it goes back to those constant conversations and the choices that you make. And then you just own it once you make it.
And you build that self-efficacy because that's like what you were saying with your goals you set. I kind of clicked for me when you were talking about that is you're never you never hit the top. Like you're never at the pinnacle. You always want to do more and more, prove more to yourself. So I guess
Right.
the bodybuilding show was like kind of took you up a notch, like of proving what you can do to yourself.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that too, because I didn't tell anybody that I was training for this
I rem
contest. Like my son knew,
I remember.
and I eventually told my mom because I was not had to go visit, but I went to go visit her, and I
And
was
you're like,
like, I'm gonna have a little bit different diet than you guys while I'm up here. And then I told like two of my friends, and then as it was a week out from contest prep, I did tell a couple more teachers on my hallway at school. I was like, just in case I pass out, here's what's happening.
they could probably start telling a difference too. When you said you went to visit your mom, I figured like she probably could tell in your face at that point.
I'm like, what are you doing? And she said, no, what did she say? She said, well, you always had to do things the hard way.
Or people will say, "Are you okay? Are you feeling okay?" If they don't know, they're like, "Are you okay?"
I'm not okay.
Right.
Why'd you recognize that?
But I do. I love that point you made about like goals being just that next level. And I know I interrupted you. You were on your point. So I think you were on like a fourth point or something, but I just wanted to stop and emphasize that a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's important to just realize like your baseline changes, right? Once you get to a certain point, even well, like you make your prior best as your new baseline, right?
Sure.
So what I really did well last year or this week, all right, that's my baseline now. I did it. I know I can do it. So now what's my next step? And I think it's really important for women especially just remember to step back and reflect and celebrate. Like, look, man, I was here. I did do this. And it could be as simple as something you did yesterday. Look, I put my shoes on and walked out the door at the time that I said I would. Bam, I can do it again today.
Yeah.
And so remember context, remember size. Like you're not going to have, like you can have a big vision, but you need to remember that day-to-day discipline. And I have algorithms, right? So I think it's really important to anticipate the obstacles that you're going to face. So when I decided that I was going to do this bodybuilding contest, I knew that this was going to consume my thinking. I knew that I was going to be constantly wondering when I'm going to eat, what am I going to eat, when am I going to work out, how am I going to do this while my son plays travel ball and teaching. And I went through all of those potential obstacles in my mind, and I didn't write them down, but in my mind, I made a plan. I was like, okay, here's what I can do. So you anticipate those obstacles and use these algorithms. Well, if I am tired, then what will I do? And if you write those down and you have those in your mind, those will help you overcome those obstacles. So,
I love
there's
it.
a lot of, front loading, like planning ahead. It's not just, oh, I'm going to do great on the stage. I never thought that. My thinking was always, I'm going to do the best I can and see what happens. And then, but it was always, if this happens, if I feel this way, then this. And I had a plan because I knew that I was going to face challenges along that whole journey.
That is awesome. It's almost like a contract to yourself.
Yeah,
That's
exactly. Making a commitment.
Yeah, especially when emotions get involved or you're feeling worn down and you just don't feel like doing it. There's something about it being in writing. It makes it more powerful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Wendy. This is like I'm gonna have to rewind and watch and rewatch this because you gave so much good info. And I do have a feeling that some people are gonna want to see more of you. Like after hearing this, I have a feeling that a lot of people are gonna relate. Where can they find you as far as your books? And what are your books?
My books are on Amazon, so you can look for my name, Wendi Pillars, on Amazon. But you can find my book, Visual Note Taking for Educators, was my first one, and obviously that is geared towards educators and those who are in the classroom. And then the second one is Visual Impact. It's quick, easy tools for thinking in pictures. So.
And I want to emphasize that one because I got to read that one. I didn't finish all of it, but it's set up in a way where you can jump around. And I'm saying this because there's a lot of people in the network who have kids on the spectrum. Because I talk to a lot of you ladies during the day and we connect, we relate in that aspect. And I will say that what you shared in that book, especially the section that was more geared towards teaching, I feel like has been helpful for me with my son because there's a lot of times where I've forgotten, like, that he might not be learning the same way I am. So like having that visual cue, especially like drawing together, it just makes a difference as far as it really sticking and like him really understanding it better. So it's, yeah, it's been powerful. So that's why I really wanted you to share it with everybody.
Thank you.
But thank you so much, Wendi. I won't hold you up anymore. Yeah. This was so good, and I'm going to be seeing you soon. But thank you guys so much for joining. And there will probably be some questions. I'm going to go back through and look at them. And Wendi, this will be posted on my Facebook page. And again, if you're watching the replay, hit hashtag replay so that we know you joined in the comments below. And y'all have a fantastic week.
Yes. All right. Here's to baby steps towards the big vision.
Oh, boom. Mic drop. Thank you so much, Wendi.
All right. Thank you, Aubrey.